So, welcome back to the third episode of the Euro Step Hoops podcast. Today is August 10th, and the NBA is in full swing. Every team has played at least 5 games, and in this episode, we will rank all the teams in a tier list, giving our opinions on how the teams have done so far. But first off, we have some questions that we want to talk about regarding what has happened so far in the bubble. So, Max, what is your general opinion of the games and the bubble so far?
For me at least, I think the games have been perfectly great. You know, since there's no crowd, the NBA players have obviously mentioned that, you know, they can hit shots at a better rate, and the stats doesn't lie about that. They've been hitting way more shots, at least than usual, compared to when they have a live audience. But in my opinion, in general, the games have been great. It's been great seeing a lot of trash talk between, for example, Damian Lillard and Paul George and etc., even Kyle Lowry and Aaron Gordon. So it's been great seeing as if NBA was back 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and it's as if nothing has changed really, other than the crowd and maybe a few restrictions here and there.
Yeah, you can definitely know that there's some cussing going around because basically a lot of the broadcast is getting like cut out because people are talking all the time on the court. But for me, I think the first couple games, like the scrimmage games, were kind of sloppy, low field goal percentage, a lot of foul calls. But it's much better now. The games are entertaining, a lot of overtime games. And it's good that games start earlier than compared to the normal when it's like 7 o'clock Eastern time. Now it starts like 12 or 1 o'clock. And it's great for EU fans who want to watch the games early. And it's like perfect for them because they can, come back from work or whatever and like 8 o'clock and just watch an NBA game. A lot of close games and enjoyable basketball, but what's sad for me is like all the injuries that have happened. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's so many, I don't know of that many injuries other than Simmons, Butler, and Embiid. I think Fournier and Gordon were gone as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also Jonathan Isaac. He's those are the most notable ones off the top of my head that are gone. But since I guess they haven't played professionally in 4 months, I guess they could be more prone to injury. Just a quick guess, I suppose. But it sucks that the injuries are here. But regardless of who wins it or not, this season will have like a little asterisk on it, as Giannis said.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot. We've also made our opinions about if it should be or should not be a season with an asterisk on it. But none of that. Let's go on to our next question, which is the biggest surprise team in the bubble. So who do you have?
For me, the biggest surprise team has to be the Phoenix Suns. Going into the bubble, I never expected them to go at least above 10th place.
Yeah.
Because I thought the West would be so stacked with Memphis, New Orleans, Portland, and even San Antonio. I did not know Phoenix would go on that huge winning streak they got with Devin Booker, all the way up to what, they're 9th now? 9th? 8th?
I think they're 10th currently, 10th or 11th, but they've won every single game and they still have to win more games if they want to have the chance, but they've been great in my opinion.
Yeah, they're 100% my biggest surprise team so far.
I wanted to note out 2 teams. Of course, the Phoenix Suns being like number 1. They've been great, and it's really nice to see because they've had abysmal seasons. Past couple of years. They showed some flashes at the start of the year that they could be good, but then Ayton happened with his drug test and stuff like that, so they fell off a little bit. But it's good seeing them back now at full strength and doing what they're supposed to do. And players like Cameron Payne, who we thought was a third-string point guard and just a bench warmer and a guy who can just dance, suddenly popping off, being a great role player for San Antonio, as well as Cameron Johnson, who they picked over some players like Tyler Hero and stuff like that really early in the draft, and who people thought it was a reach. I mean, he still is probably a reach, but he's played great for Phoenix, as well as Mikal Bridges.
Oh, yeah.
Your guy.
Yeah, I know Cam Johnson. He's helped them stretch the floor as well, and I would never expect, as you said with Cameron Payne, with that weird jump shot where he has his feet lined up to the side.
Oh, yeah.
And strokes that thing in the fucking basket. Never expected that.
And Mikal Bridges as well. your guy in fantasy league. He hasn't been shooting particularly well, but he's got rid of the yips that he's had, so his shot looks much better. But his defense is his main talking point. He's been clamping people up. So Phoenix, they have a lot of weapons they can use.
I would see it as untapped potential. I can see maybe in a few years, I can maybe see Phoenix reaching the playoffs, because there are teams right now that are in the playoffs that are getting older and older, such as Houston. So I could see maybe potentially Phoenix maybe snagging a playoff spot in maybe 2 years or something.
It would be nice to see, like having like looking back at all those years where they were pretty mediocre. I think they have a lot of rest, so now I think it's time for them to show what they're really worth.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them play, to be honest, because they have that winning streak on the line.
Oh yeah. I also wanted to shout out Indiana Pacers. It's not like they, well, we all know they've been a solid team, but it's just great to see them winning teams like the Sixers, the Lakers. They're the top field goal percentage team, which is great for Indiana because their fans have always scolded their head coach, Nate McMillan, for their terrible offense. We know their defense is good, but their offense hasn't been as consistent. So it's really nice that they're clicking, I guess. And even without Sabonis, what do you think about that?
To be honest, I think it's really good. I want to see Miles Turner do more because I haven't heard much about him this bubble, but I know Aaron Holiday, he's been doing good. I know Justin Holiday has been doing okay as well. We all know, of course, TJ Warren, who's also been, turning into reincarnation of God himself in the basketball court. He's been doing great as well. But it's great to see Indiana also playing well, knowing that they have Sabonis, Sabonis injured and other, scenarios happening to them. It's great to see them getting decent offense going, at least. When you said the thing with Nate McMillan defense.
Yeah.
So it looks like, they've flipped the switch in that regard, at least.
We always thought they're going to have problems with big guys. So they had Jakar Sampson starting in the scrimmage. Now they have Turner back. But also a player I want to shout out, Goga Bitadze. We know he got picked early in the draft. And he didn't really get much playing time, either due to injuries or the stacked rotation. But he's starting to hit threes now and being a really solid piece for them. And I think it's going to happen moving forward in the playoffs as well.
Hey, only time will tell. Only time will tell to see how Indy will do in the playoffs.
All right. For you, what do you think has been the biggest surprise player?
100%. I think he's on everybody's mind. It just has to be TJ Warren.
Yep.
Averaging 36 points, shooting 60% from the field, 50% from three, around that mark.
55.
I never
almost 56. That's crazy.
Almost 55, 56%. It's leaving me speechless that TJ Warren is the guy we have to say, he is carrying the Indiana offense right now. Like, we know when he was in Phoenix, I saw when he was in Phoenix, he was really good player around high teens, scoring like 16, 17 points, and we knew he was a bucket getter. Every season, he's been better and better since his rookie year. And when he came to Indy for cash considerations, I thought that was a steal, personally.
That's crazy.
That's actually crazy. Cash considerations for 17 points per game, around that mark. And I know if I thought with TJ Warren, at best, he'd average at most 23 points. Never expected him during the bubble to average over 35, 36 points in this huge stretch of amount of games already.
Imagine if Phoenix kept them. Like what they would have now.
Oh my goodness. So we probably have Rubio, Booker, Ayton, Warren, and Saric probably.
They have some guys coming off the bench like Bridges and Kelly Oubre as well.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be good. I think Kelly Oubre is a really good player.
I like him.
He's a nice player.
For me, of course, I have to agree with you with TJ Warren. You basically said everything. I just wanted to add that it's not only been in the offensive end, he's also been stellar on the defensive end. He's averaging 1.6 steals and 1.4 blocks per game. That's crazy. Like, he's literally been all over the place, offense and defense.
Man, he's all around GOAT at this moment right now.
And I think another player who I wanted to shout out, who I think is on your mind as well, Gary Trent.
Yup.
Gary Trent. What I can say about Trent, he is averaging 18 points per game, shooting 53% from the field and 57% from three, knocking down almost 5 threes a game. For a guy that was a role player, being now a key player for them in their playoff push, this is great for Portland. I think they've needed that ever since the Rodney Hood injury. They were just looking for that wing who can, create his own shot or drill shots. We know Rodney Hood was a good three-point shooter. What do you think of Gary Trent so far?
He's been absolutely ballistic from three. He reminds me a little bit of Victor Oladipo when he started in Indiana. Like suddenly, you didn't expect much from Oladipo when he started with Oklahoma City during the Paul George trade. But Oladipo just suddenly bursted onto the scene as a star. And I can see that a little bit with Gary Trent as of some of a really solid role player shooting a high clip from three. It's like he suddenly turned into, Klay Thompson in the bubble.
It's going to be interesting to see if he can snag that small forward starting spot in the future. I think he can. I don't think Carmelo's going to hold it for very long. So they have a nice future core.
Carmelo is I'd say he's a nice short-term option. Yeah. He's there when you need him, but age is catching up to him, but it doesn't look like he's lost that much of a step since at least Houston. Because during the last games in Houston, he was popping off, and during the start with him in Portland, it was a little bit slow at first, but you could see he was starting to pick everything up slowly.
Yeah, I think Portland has a bright future ahead of them, and I'm hoping for them to, make that final push for the playoffs, as it's looking more and more likely every day.
Yeah, but speaking of Gary Trent, what do you think his ceiling is like?
Like as in player comparison?
Not player comparison,
or stats
but
wise.
How good do you think he can really be? Right now we see him as a great spot-up shooter and a guy you need a three-pointer when you'll get it to him. But do you think he can be something more than that?
It's hard to tell because I never really expected him to become what he is right now. I don't know if this is a fluke or if this will stay. But I can see him being, at least for Portland, a solid fourth option. That guy who stretches the floor, can hit threes at a very high clip and percentage. So that's what I think of him. I need more sample size to really tell what he can do, like legitimately. This is not that much of a sample size, but what we've seen so far is really encouraging.
It is really.
All right, going from biggest surprise player, how about we go to the biggest letdown team?
The biggest letdown team for me, it has to be the Los Angeles Lakers. I can't describe how bad they've been right now. For me, it's tough to explain how I thought they would do amazing in the bubble, but right now, compared to all the teams, they're scoring the least points per game out of all of them, with only a little bit over 100, and they're last in three-point percentage with around 25%. Although LeBron is leading the team in scoring with 21, he's shooting 28% from three. I'd never expected LeBron to at least do that in the
He's
bubble.
had better. He's had better times.
He's had better, but I'm expecting him to pick things up during the playoffs. I think LeBron and AD, they're playoff players. Also regular season players, don't get me wrong, but I think it's in the playoffs we're really going to see what this LA team is made of.
Yeah, and just to add to your point, it's not only the field goal percentage, they're also, by a mile, the worst three-point shooting team and second worst free throw shooting team. So their numbers have just been abysmal throughout everything. And they've let me down as well. They're my biggest letdown team. They've lost to teams like the Rockets, the Thunder, Jazz, Pacers, which are good teams, but from the first seed in the West, the Lakers, you expected them to at least win one or two of those games, knowing that they did beat the Clippers. And it's just sloppy play from their veteran players, mainly Danny Green and Anthony Davis. Also some stuff that LeBron said, some kind of things off the court that they're trying to fix. So I'm hoping that they can do it before the playoffs. but it's also, I think it's also a nice thing that they get to play against these tough teams. That they also get to make adjustments and learn from that.
Yeah, yeah. I think only time will tell how good they'll be. I hope it's not only to find out they get bounced down in the first round by the potential 8 seed, but I want LA to succeed this playoff run. I want to see Anthony Davis get his ring, to be honest, because in New Orleans it felt like it was an eternity before he was at least going to reach the playoffs. I mean, how many times was he in the playoffs? Once?
No, he was there more, like at least 3 times, but he didn't really get the opportunity he deserved.
I know. He had to carry that organization for so many years, though.
They had that one year where they had Mirotic and Drew Holiday, where they swept the Portland Trailblazers. Imagine if Cousins
caught me by surprise.
If Cousins was healthy and didn't have his torn ACL or whatever he had that year, that would have been a scary team.
It would be nice to see Boogie Cousins and AD in the playoffs together with, for example, Drew Holiday and Rajon Rondo, who was at that time, he was amazing in the playoffs with Mirotic. Playoff Rondo, and also, for example, Mirotic coming off the bench, providing a solid spark for them as well. It'd be great to see that.
Sad it didn't happen, and he's now a Laker. It's going to be interesting to see what he does in the offseason. It's probably obvious that he's going to stay with the Lakers, but in these days you never know. Like, stuff happens. But talking about Anthony Davis, if we're done with the team part, we can go to the biggest letdown player, which for me is Anthony Davis. Besides the 2 good games he's had in victories over the Clippers and Jazz, he's had 4 terrible games, scoring 17, 14, 9, and 8 points, all in losses. I think he sometimes forgets he's a beast on the court and just disappears in those games. But with the Lakers already having the 1 seed in bag, I guess it's okay. And as I said, it's good for them to face strong teams so they can make adjustments and learn from that. What about you?
Yeah, I had a little toss-off between John Morant, who's been struggling significantly this bubble, but I'm not gonna give it to him, because we know Memphis, they weren't projected to be in the playoffs, and they have one of the hardest schedules in the bubble. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. We have the same letdown player here with Anthony Davis. I mean, scoring single digits, and you're the second option, and you're a max contract player. I never expected that from Anthony Davis, to be honest with you. He's the last player I expected it. And to be honest, how I see it is what I see in a player, or what I see in a team more or less, is chemistry. If you have good chemistry with your teammates, I can see how you'll flourish perfectly. For example, Lance Stevenson, right? He's, for example, Indiana's perfect player. Every time Lance Stevenson is in Indiana, he proceeds to, have fun. And it looks like he's most perfect teammate for you on your team. But when you play against him, you hate playing against him. But ever since he left Indiana, at least for the first time, he was struggling mightily, and he was getting bounced around the league here and there. But once he came back, it looked like he was same old Lance again.
Yeah.
Man. But really, back to Anthony Davis, it's unfortunate to see that, he's produced this, at least in the bubble, when basketball is back. But I know this will just be a small letdown. It's just a small letdown. I know he'll pick it up in the playoffs, 100%.
All right. So we've talked about the biggest surprises, the biggest letdowns. But there's some teams that fall behind. I guess not a lot of people talk about them. So what is your most underrated team in the bubble so far?
My most underrated team is the Houston Rockets.
Ooh.
When I saw that when I realized that players were shooting better in the bubble, the first team in my mind was seeing, okay, how will Houston do? Because they're doing that ultra small ball lineup with PJ Tucker, Robert Covington, Harden, Westbrook, Jeff Green, etc., Austin Rivers, who actually had a 40-point game. I can't believe that. And that just proves to the fact that Houston is going all out with the shooters. And so far, what was their record again? I think their record is 4-1 these past 5 games, and they've been shooting lights out. Every position Houston has can shoot the 3 ball. And other than Portland, I can see Houston causing some trouble for both of the Laker teams, honestly.
Both of the Laker teams?
Both of
Los
them.
Angeles teams.
Both of the my bad.
Laker teams.
Yeah, both of the Los Angeles teams. My bad.
Yeah, I agree.
I can see Houston. Houston can make a lot of noise in the bubble, specifically in the bubble.
Yeah. I like your point, but I'm going with the Brooklyn Nets. I thought they would get swept around the floor, but my guys, they beat the Bucks and the Clippers. They've definitely exceeded my expectations, and Karis LeVert leading the team. Joe Harris has been wonderful, averaging more than 20 points per game, and they've already, notched the 7th seed. They're not going to fall behind, so they have a playoff matchup against Toronto. And it's exciting to see if they can pull off, an upset. I don't think they're necessarily going to win 4 games, but they can definitely cause some trouble, like winning 1 or 2 games.
I can see they can win 2 games, around 2 games. Yeah.
It probably won't happen, but what they've shown so far, it's intimidating, at least for some teams, I think.
I know, because people forget Jared Allen can block absolutely anybody at any time, and those blocks that he does, they're like somewhat of a momentum swing for their team. So I could see Jared Allen being a huge X factor for them this playoffs.
I just realized what team they're gonna have when everybody gets healthy. Like that team is scary. It's really scary.
Oh my god. So many. I'm expecting so many ISO plays with Durant and Kyrie next year.
Like, did a team like that have so many players that can score 50 on any given night? They have Dinwiddie, LeVert, Irving, Durant. Like, that's a lot of firepower on offense.
That's a lot of firepower. A lot. But in the playoffs, I'm excited to see what Brooklyn can do, because I've always been a sucker for those underdog teams, The teams that you don't expect to do well, but then they do well. For example, the We Believe Warriors when they beat Dallas. It was fun to see, the underdogs go to work, because you know what they're capable of.
Yeah. It's really fun watching like underdogs and seeing if they can actually pull off an upset.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. Really fun. Really cool.
All right, so going for most underrated team, we can go to the most underrated player in the bubble so far. What do you have?
For me, I have Derek White of the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio Spurs was really close for my surprise team, but Derek White has been pulling his weight with 20 points per game, shooting 43.8% from 3, and also a stellar 4 rebounds and 4 assists as well, with a San Antonio team who can make a little bit of noise in the playoffs as well if everything goes correctly for them. So, Derek White, we saw him in the playoffs last year. I think he baptized Paul Millsap last year, and he had a 30 bomb in the playoffs. If that doesn't prove to you enough that you're a valid contributor for a contending team, I don't see anything else, because if you can prove to teams that you can play well in the playoffs, I can see you have a bright future in the league no matter where you are. Because Robert Horry, he has 7 rings, and he's always been clutch in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's had game winner after game winner in the playoffs. Not that Derek White will have all these game winners and all these rings, but the point is, he'll produce well in the playoffs. For example, with what CJ McCollum did as well with Game 7 versus Denver.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, my most underrated player, not by a landslide. I had a few others pretty close, such as, Gary Trent. But I think nobody is talking about Derek White as much as they should with what he's been putting up.
I remember before the episode you said that I would never predict what you have as your most underrated player.
Okay.
Yeah. Guess what I have?
We have the same. Of course.
One. He is my close second, but he was about to be my first. Derek White, for all the things you said, I agree with everything. San Antonio, a team holding tight on the race for the 8th seed. Also, I think the part where he got into Team USA last year was, I think, a big stepping stone for him, because at least now people know that, oh yeah, he got in the Team USA, which means he's probably a decent player. So yeah, but you know, he was top, like really high on my list, but I had to go for Michael Porter Jr. Oh my God, this boy been averaging 26 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists for a Denver team that's been missing some pieces, but has used the opportunity and has been basically a blessing in disguise for this team. Because Michael Porter Jr., he's here, he's ready, and at such of a young age to score 26 points, it's great. And yeah, watch out for Michael Porter Jr. in Denver in the playoffs.
Yeah, to add with what you're saying, when I'm watching Michael Porter Jr. play, every time I see him go to the basket, I'm always expecting him to throw it down. But for a guy his size to lay it up with such a smooth touch, that says a lot. Like, his game is like really close to Kevin Durant's right now, with how I'm seeing with the shooting, with the isolation plays in the 3-point line, and the smooth touch, because Kevin Durant has that smooth touch. Michael Porter Jr., he's going to be a force to be reckoned with, together with Bol as well, for the future.
I can't believe Denver has so many players that have like such a high potential, high ceiling. I remember when he got drafted, like he basically almost fell out of the lottery, and like you can see him in the green room or whatever where he was sitting. Like, he was just super sad, like, that nobody drafted him. And then Denver picked him up, and I was like, oh, like, well, if he actually pans out, like, look out for that Denver team. Like, they can actually be really great for not only, like, the next years, but for, like, maybe decade. Because their team is so young.
If everything goes right, I can see how they'll contend for the decade, because they're one of the only teams I've seen that go for the lottery but also contend in the same year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's one of the most interesting scenarios I've seen with the teams.
It's like basically like Boston, like where they had the first seed with Isaiah Thomas, but they also had the first pick, which is probably like historic. But they traded down to get Jason Tatum. What a fleece by Danny Ainge, by the way. Shout out Ainge.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we just had to fleece Philadelphia. We just had to do it to him.
All right. But yeah, going for most underrated player, I think we've talked about, you know, most of the teams and most of the players that we wanted to talk about. But looking at the standings right now, how do you like where each team is in the standings currently? And how do you see, you know, the first round matchups? Who do you want to see, and how do you think it'll be as you watch the standings currently?
As I watch the standings currently, if I'm not mistaken, Memphis is still 8th, right? But they're barely hanging on.
0.5
right?
games ahead of Portland, yeah.
0.5 games. Anything can happen. I personally, I want to see Portland. I want to see Portland reach the 8th seed. Because I remember earlier, Charles Barkley said, I think the Portland Trailblazers will surprise and upset the Los Angeles Lakers. So far for me, Charles Barkley sounds like a god right now. And to be honest, right now I agree with him. Not that they'll upset the Lakers, because it's LeBron in the playoffs. You don't stop LeBron in the playoffs. But people forget that almost all the pieces from the Western Conference Finals team is still there. You know, other than Rodney Hood being gone, they have Gary Trent Jr., who's filling the void, and if not, doing better than Rodney Hood with his shooting splits right now. And people forget that Yusuf Nurkic is a beast, my guy. He is a beast. You know, he's been having an exceptional return to the bubble. People forget also that they've had decent bench pieces as well coming for them, such as Rodney Hood last year coming off the bench in that, what was it, double overtime game? It
was triple, if not maybe quadruple overtime.
Many overtimes, Rodney Hood came back. But other than that, I can see Portland creating a lot of noise because, as I said, they were in the Western Conference Finals last year with the same pieces, and if not, a better team than last year. Because if you're watching Damian Lillard play now, he had 51 yesterday?
Yeah, 51 or 53.
51 versus the Philadelphia 76ers, just activating in his bag, pulling from deep and 1 threes, everything. he can do my taxes as well, and he'll do that better than me. My own taxes, probably. But but yeah, I'll see Portland reaching the 8th seed. Maybe Phoenix, because I don't know if they'll be there yet, just because of the experience factor. Damian Lillard has experience knocking teams out of playoff contention. He even knocked out New Orleans out just yesterday because they had to win the game versus Philly.
Yeah, I guess since we're talking about the 8th seeds, we can focus on that. I also see Portland making it instead of Memphis. Memphis has 2 games left and they're both tough. I can even see Portland moving into the 8th spot, which means they would only have to win 1 game against the 9th seed to get in. So it's looking more and more likely that they're going to get that 8th spot. Also, it's going to be interesting to see if Phoenix can get it. Like, their run has been just a fairy tale so far. But it's a matter of time. A matter of time will tell if, they can keep this fairy tale up, because they basically need to win every game inside the bubble to only have a chance to get in, And there's also San Antonio's right behind Portland. But if you had to ask me right now, currently, I'm picking the Trailblazers as well to take the 8th seed.
Yeah.
But yeah, since I asked about a question, what do you think about the playoff seedings, and who would you like to see play which team? Which is your preferred playoff games versus the thing that's most likely going to happen?
For me in the East, I think I don't know if Miami will do. I don't know if Miami will beat Indiana, because I know they're gonna play each other soon.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Butler coming back from an injury, I don't know if he'll be on the minutes restriction or if he'll go all out. But watching Indiana play, I think they'll beat Miami. And could Indiana overtake Miami in the playoffs? In the seeding?
Yeah, they're basically tied right now, and they have a game tonight, so that game is going to be really, really interesting. And they meet another time after that as well.
That's going to be crucial. And Philadelphia, they're the 6th seed, right?
Yeah, 1 game behind.
And right now, if let's say for example Philadelphia proceeds to win many games, even though I don't think they will because Simmons and Embiid are gone. Yeah. Let's say, for example, Miami, they go down to the 6th seed. I would love to see a Boston and Miami matchup, because we're going to have so much talent, so much young talent that could be potential matchups for the future in Miami and Boston. Because Miami, they have so many really good experienced players, but amazing young players as well who are not afraid to step up. And we have the same thing with Boston, which with our main pieces in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and experienced vets with Gordon Hayward and Kemba. But I'm excited to see what Kemba will do in the playoffs, finally with an established lineup next to him. Because, knowing how he was in Charlotte, he was carrying that franchise like Anthony Davis was. But it's going to be great to see him finally, ball out in the playoffs and maybe win a series or 2. But a dream matchup for me, long story short, would be Miami and Boston in the first round.
That would be a bloodbath. As a Celtics fan, I would not want to see that. That would be a bloodbath. But I would be mad if we lost, but what I love more than anything is fun and good basketball. So I would love to see those two head to head. That's true. But also, one of the teams I think that could beat the Bucks is the Miami Heat. So I would love to see them stay the 4 or 5 seed so they can have the potential to play in the second round. That's my dream. So looking at it currently, we know Orlando is going to play Milwaukee, and we know that Toronto Raptors are going to play the Nets. There's no way around that. They can't overtake each other or anything. But yeah, it's just Boston waiting to see which team they're going to play out of the 3-team race between the Heat, the Pacers, and the Sixers. As a Celtics fan, which team would you prefer playing?
I'd prefer to play Philadelphia, just because they lost their core in Simmons and Embiid. Knowing Embiid, it's sad to see Embiid have injury history, because he does a lot of trash talk on the field. I watch him play, and it just looks like he's trying to clown around every other player on the other team, getting in their head, but that's what he does. But at times he has the trash talk to back it up, at times he doesn't. And watching him getting injured all the time, it worries me because I don't want him to have a career that ends up short because he's already such a personality in the league.
Oh yeah, I
But
love Joel.
I love Joel too. It's just that I want to see him have that success. Unfortunately, it won't be this year, but I hope next year or maybe the year after that. I want to see them reach the finals because I know last year if it wasn't for Kawhi's shot, I could easily see them reaching the finals because they were playing exceptional versus Toronto. Every game I was watching, I'm like, okay, they're playing like they're gonna win. Next game, the opposite happens. The other team wins. With Toronto and Philly, it was back and forth constantly. They were making me debate who was gonna reach the finals until Kawhi sealed it with one of the greatest shots I've ever seen. But I think Philadelphia will be one of the easier matchups in the first round, just because they lost I'd say 60-70% of their roster, other than Tobias Harris, who's been balling, by the way.
Oh yeah.
But I don't see Tobias Harris carrying the 76ers at the moment.
Adding to your point about last year, their team was stacked, but the problem is it was kind of inconsistent, so that was the biggest downfall for them. But as we've seen, like in the games where they won, where they clicked, it was crazy. Like they could throw so much firepower. And looking at it now, yeah, probably not this year. And I agree with the fact that I would love to see Boston play Philadelphia just because of the nagging injuries for the Sixers. But looking at the future, they have two guys making mad dollars, featuring Tobias Harris, who's not been bad, but they're paying him a max contract, as well as Al Horford. And Al Horford, we know like he's not been good around Joel Embiid. Maybe Joel Embiid like not playing now. It's still to be determined how long. But maybe him not playing now, maybe that leaves a door wide open for Al Horford to show what he's worth and if he's worth something. Because I'm fairly certain they're probably going to try to trade Al Horford this season because their salary cap is effed basically. It's really bad, and I can't see them signing any free agents unless they trade Al Horford.
I think maybe Al Horford and a first round pick, because I don't think anybody's going to want that contract with what he's producing this season. So I could see maybe a player and Al Horford and a first round pick, maybe for, I don't know who they could trade for off the go, but I think they're going to have to attach a first round pick to it just to make it, appealing.
It's also going to be tough because with the COVID outbreak, the salary cap is probably going to go down, which means players are going to receive less salary, which means it's going to be less likely that they're going to match the salaries for Al Horford. And it's probably going to have to be a team with salary space or with a player that has an expiring contract, but a big contract. You don't have many of those left after which was it, 2015 or 2016 offseason, where, all the big deals came out with like Luol Deng and Timothy Mozgov, Evan Turner. I think those...
I was going to talk about Timothy Mozgov. He secured a bag after Cleveland.
Yeah, but I think their deals are done this year. So not a lot of players with, those big contracts that you can trade for. It's going to be tough.
Man, that's going to be really tough. Really tough.
And talking about Miami and Indiana, I know I talked to you about it yesterday, but they have a chance of playing, like Miami and Indiana, they have a chance of, like, their next 10 games, none of them are going to be against each other. That's crazy.
If the chips stack up right, we could see Jimmy Butler and TJ Warren trash talking each other every game, clapping in each other's faces. It's gonna remind me of Brooklyn versus Philly from last year with Jared Dudley and Ben Simmons just taunting each other all the time. I want that rivalry with Jimmy Butler and TJ Warren. I think it's what the NBA needs.
Oh yeah.
It's creating that excitement. It's creating that feeling that you had back in the day, because I don't see any players, going for punching each other other than, Serge Ibaka or Rajon Rondo. But we would see those brawl fights, punching each other in the face a lot more back in the day. And, maybe you can take into account, social media, and it's been more kid-friendly watching the league now. But, it would be great to see, maybe a huge brawl happen again. But Wait, hang on. Before I switch, speaking of brawls, do you remember when I think it was the Philippines they played Australia, like a year ago or so?
Okay.
And thought there was a huge ball, and then you just see Thon Maker just flying kick someone.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, that was crazy.
Damn, Thon Maker activating his inner Bruce Lee during a freaking basketball
I also remember in the Chinese league there was Terrence Jones. You remember him from Houston?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
I know
like he
what
was
you're gonna talk
dancing
about.
afterwards. It was really crazy.
It was the player who, was it shoved him, right? Who was just dancing afterwards after he got ejected.
Yeah, that was really random, but hey, it's for entertainment, right?
Man, hey, if I met that guy, all I'll say is you do you. I wouldn't do that because when I play basketball, I'm competitive, but I'm not good.
Yeah.
But I'd just say you do you.
Before we move on to the Western Conference playoffs, I just want to quickly shout out the Washington Wizards, who've lost every single game in the bubble, and due to that, they've fallen back in the seeding behind Charlotte and Chicago. I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was funny.
Wait, Charlotte and Chicago?
Yeah, basically they lost every game, so in terms of games behind the first seed, they're currently 11th. Because they lost. Yeah, I think that was just pretty funny.
So you're telling me Chicago with Jim Boylan is better than a team with Bradley Beal?
Yeah, but the circumstances played it that way. That Jim Boylan didn't have to play a single game, and the Washington didn't even have Bradley Beal. But
hey, watch out for Jim Boylan in the bubble, okay? Watch out. He'll probably play Zach LaVine 10 minutes, bench him, and then he'll probably take him back for another few minutes.
well, it's going to be interesting to see.
I feel for Chicago fans, okay? I feel for you.
Yeah.
Not that I don't, because we have Brad Stevens as a great coach. You guys need to get rid of Jim Boylan immediately, dog. You guys need to get rid of him immediately.
Yeah, I think we've said that the past couple episodes. I don't think Jim Boylan is wanted on our podcast.
We've been saying get Jim Boylan out of Chicago for quite some time now, and we're not even Chicago fans. I could imagine the pain and suffering that Chicago Bulls fans have been going through right now.
But yeah. All right, but going to the Western Conference. When you're looking at the standings there, which matchups would you like to see in the first round?
In the first round, I would love to see. I think Dallas and the Clippers. I think that'll be a great matchup.
That's probably going to happen as well.
It will get. Won't it happen guaranteed? I know the 7th seed is locked for Dallas, and isn't the 2nd seed locked for the Clippers?
No, it's actually not true. They can technically fall. Dallas can make their way up to as much as 5th, but that's if every card is played right. They have to win every game, and Utah and OKC both have to lose all of their games.
Okay, but we'll go into that afterwards probably. But if the playoffs started today, I would love to see Luka Doncic versus Kawhi Leonard in a playoff series.
And it's also interesting to see because Dallas has shown that they can, hold up with the big dogs. They beat Milwaukee a couple days ago. They did lose to the Clippers, but it was a close game, meaning that, them being the 7th seed, they're compared to the Eastern Conference where they have Brooklyn, Dallas can actually, legitimately pull off an upset. They can beat the Clippers. What do you think about that?
If everything goes right, I can see them beating them, but as they've been playing in the bubble, it's been a little bit up and down.
That's
a little
true.
bit inconsistencies here and there. But if Portland decides to play like the We Believe Warriors and just activate everything goes correctly.
Dallas, you mean?
Let's say Dallas and Luka decides to posterize Ivica Zubac, Let's say if that caps off game 1. If they keep that going, I could see, Dallas being a huge threat to even the later teams in the other rounds if they beat the Clippers.
Oh, yeah. And I think what in that matchup, what plays a big role is the Clippers' depth if they get their players back. I know Harrell got back in the bubble yesterday, so it's a matter of time to see when he gets back, if he's going to get back in time for the playoffs. He needs to quarantine for at least 4 days, I think, and then, all the conditioning and training. So I think that will play a huge role, seeing if they have enough depth so they can hold on, upcoming teams. But because their depth is huge, and they can pretty much match up versus anybody. So it's just a matter of time to see if they can get that back before the playoffs.
It's just a matter of time, but Kawhi and Paul George, I know Paul George has been a little bit inconsistent during these past few years with the playoffs, but we know what Kawhi can do. Kawhi gave me that, LeBron effect where he literally willed his team to the championship.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait to see what Kawhi Leonard does this year,
Yeah. And looking at the standings currently, I would love to see, or not that I'm hoping for it, but I would love to see Denver play Oklahoma in the first round, because Oklahoma's been playing great.
Good matchup.
And Denver's also been playing to their levels, but Oklahoma getting all their pieces back plus Oscar Robertson. I think that team can compete. Like they can.
You mean Andre Robertson?
Andre Robertson, yeah. They can compete.
Oscar Robertson.
Did I say Oscar Robertson?
Back from retirement. Oscar Robertson, dude.
Yeah, if they had him, I think that would be a done deal. But
another triple double machine coming out of retirement. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
wait, hang on, before we continue, if there's one player you want to see come out of retirement and let's say bail out the 76ers, who would you want to see?
In their prime or currently?
Prime.
Bail out the Sixers. Does he have to be from the Sixers? Like
anybody.
I mean, then I'm picking Michael Jordan, basically. Like he's probably gonna will the whole team.
Of course, yeah, I could 100% see him will the whole team, but to be honest, I want to see how prime Charles Barkley would fare in today's NBA. He, undersized power forward, but gets rebounds and everything. I want to see him, and I would also love to see Dennis Rodman play in this NBA. We know offense isn't there, but I want to see him, for example, try, play versus, let's say, Porzingis in the post or any other big in the post. I want to see how Dennis Rodman would fare in this league.
That's interesting. But I love Charles in the TNT crew, so I want him to stay there instead of going back to Philadelphia.
Oh my god. I remember I saw this one segment with Charles Barkley, and they were doing all these shows where they were documenting Charles Barkley's weight loss. And there's all these series with Charles Barkley versus the scales.
Hey, Charles Barkley to go.
Man. Hey, Charles Barkley been taking retirement really well, so I'm not going to judge the man if you've been paid millions of dollars and just chill playing golf and stuff like that. I wouldn't judge you either.
His best memories are probably come with, the TNT crew. Mainly for me, the top two are him lifting weights with Shaq and actually beating him. And the top one is, they did that NBA draft with all the players all time. Charles had the first pick.
And Charles Barkley took Allen Iverson with the first pick.
What a memory.
He thought it was going to be the All-Star game format, but instead it was like regular season. Yeah,
that was funny.
I can see how Michael Jordan would be pissed off with Charles Barkley there. Michael Jordan probably taking it personal as well.
All right. Going from like the playoff seedings, we can talk about two teams in particular that have been dominating the league. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Los Angeles Lakers. Who do you think is the biggest single threat to both of those teams in the playoffs?
Starting for me in the East side with Milwaukee, I see Miami being the biggest threat. Toronto is a close second because I have Miami being the biggest threat, surely because they could meet them in the second round, right?
Yes, if the playoffs started today. Yeah.
If the playoffs start today, Miami could meet them in the second round. Miami has beaten them in the regular season already twice. Bam Adebayo, he's been absolutely amazing. They have so many shooters, so many solid role players who know what they're doing. Plus their defensive game plan by stopping Giannis, it has worked really well when they played against each other. So I have Miami as the biggest threat. But I see Toronto as a very close second just because they have length and they have, big bodies down low with Serge Ibaka down there who is a playoff performer. He performs well in the playoffs. So I could see mostly Miami, but a Toronto second.
Yeah.
But for LA, I have Portland. I think Portland could upset, if everything goes right, they could upset the Lakers, because as I've mentioned, they have the team last year, almost all the important pieces from the Western Conference Finals run are there. They're playing really well. Nurkic has been shooting threes, which puts a smile to my face. So yeah, I could see Portland, shaking up LA and maybe messing them up a little bit starting for the second round.
All right. In the East, I agree with you with the Miami pick. The reason why they play so good versus the Bucks, if you've noticed, the Bucks defense is mainly crowd the paint and don't let players drive in and get easy buckets. That means they leave they leave a lot of 3-point shots open. And knowing Miami, knowing the players they have that can shoot the threes, as well as the big guys, if they hit their shots, that it's going to be easy. We almost even saw them beat the Bucks inside the bubble without Jimmy Butler. So I think the potential is real. And they, like you said, they've beaten them twice. I only recall one time, but yeah, it could be twice.
I think it was twice, but we know they've beaten them.
Yeah, I know they've beaten them at least once, and the threat is real. Like, it's really real because they know how to beat the Bucks. They've showed it in the regular season, and I'm pretty sure they could show it in the postseason as well. That's for the East. For the West, I agree with Portland as a first round matchup, but first round knockout potential out of the teams that are fighting for the eighth seed. But overall, of course, it's obviously the Clippers. But if the Clippers would beat the Lakers, I don't think it would necessarily be an upset because they're teams that people have talked about them all year, saying which is better. So a lot of people said the Clippers are better, meaning that they're basically fairly even. So if one beat the other, I don't think it would have been an upset. But if we're talking about upset potential, I'm picking the Houston Rockets. Because they won the Lakers in their first game with their new roster after the Clint Capella trade, and how they're playing right now, it's just a double-edged sword. Either they hit their shots and they're really comfortable and they win, or they miss them and it goes terribly wrong. So I can definitely see Houston Rockets, do a lot of stuff. And ever since the Capella trade, Westbrook has, there's a free lane for Westbrook to attack and kick out, and their shooters, as we mentioned in the start of the episode, they've been great. Daniel House has been great. McLemore has been great, as well as players like Austin Rivers, who dropped 40 something points.
Around 40, yeah.
That's crazy. And they also have Eric Gordon, who's going to come back from injury, hopefully. And if he plays good, I can definitely see them beating the Lakers.
I'll also shout out Jeff Green because he destroyed us 2 years ago in the playoffs.
Oh, no.
And wherever he goes for a contender, he's always a bucket. He's even a bucket now for Houston. So I'm going to shout out Jeff Green right now.
Yeah, shout out Jeff
for the
Green.
For the moments you helped us with the corner 3 versus Miami years back and just destroying us with LeBron 2 years ago, man. Everywhere you go, you're a bucket. So I'm going to shout you out right now.
It's both good and bad memories with Jeff Green.
Good and bad memories with Jeff Green, but that's what he does. He's a consistently good player for contending teams.
All right, that covers the question part, and now we're gonna do what we stated at the start of the episode. We're gonna do a tier list, tiering all the teams of how they've done so far in the bubble. So stay tuned.
Peace. Okay, right now we will be talking about a tier list containing all the NBA teams that are currently in the bubble, and we'll be basing these ranks based on their record and how they've been playing, etc., etc. As you guys can see on the screen, we have a few teams that are not in the bubble. Just exclude them. They won't be included, just like they're not included in the bubble. So yeah, I guess we can just get it started right now with the Philadelphia 76ers. And for the Philadelphia 76ers, I have them currently ranked in the B tier. And yeah, for the reasoning I have them in the B tier is not only that they have a 3-2 record, they are currently 4th in 3-point percentage and Mostly the reasoning behind that is because of Alec Burks, Josh Richardson, Furkan Korkmaz, and Tobias Harris shooting really well from three. All four of them, they're both shooting at a decent rate from three, which has contributed to the wins they have gotten without, for example, Simmons and Embiid as well. Excluding that, Embiid and Simmons, one of them has obviously played better than the other. Embiid averaging a little bit over 28 points per game, 51% from the field with 11 rebounds. But for me, Simmons, he's been a little bit underwhelming for me personally, averaging 11, 7, and 3. But the role players stepping up, key role players for me, I should say, are Tobias Harris and Josh Richardson. Tobias Harris averages 22 points with 40% from 3. Josh Richardson, 15.5 with 43% from 3. So I think, for me, B tier is solid. It's okay putting them there. Although they've been a little bit disappointing, testing out Ben Simmons at power forward. Him and Embiid are both injured, so I think B is okay for them.
Yeah, I agree with the B tier, mainly because their record. They are in the bubble 3-2. I guess knowing the fact that they don't have Simmons and Embiid, they've done solid. Nothing out of the ordinary. That's why they're kind of in the middle of the pack, B tier. You basically made all the points. I agree with you, so I guess we can move forward.
Next, we have the Indiana Pacers. I have them in the A tier at the moment. As of now, their record so far is 4-1, and most notably, they beat LA. TJ Warren, he's decided to turn into God himself, Michael Jordan 2.0, Hoodie Mello 2.0, anything you want. He's leading the league in scoring with 35 points per game, with 60% field goal efficiency and 55% from 3. And also, which is really good, is that the team is first in field goal percentage with 49.8%. So Indiana has been hitting half of their shots. Half of their shots. And TJ Warren popping off completely with these games is why I have them in the A tier.
I ranked them in the S tier just because we knew Indiana as a solid team, but we didn't kind of expect them to, pop off like this. Knowing that they don't have Sabonis and they're still doing this well, kind of made me want to put them in the S tier. But I like what you say about them. I just have a question. Why didn't you put them in the S tier yourself?
Just because when I see S tier, I expect, for me, S tier is near close to perfect. And I just think for me I have one obvious team that is an S tier. I want you to be literally undefeated if you're going to be S tier. So I guess you know where this is going. I have Indiana as an A+, S-, around there because they've been near perfect. TJ Warren being absolutely perfect, but just because of the one loss, it's a slight knock just because I like that teams are undefeated and they can show that they can stay undefeated, which we see with Phoenix. Indiana, they lost one game. That's the tiniest knock you can get. I'd say they're like a weak S, strong A. That's for me, though.
All right. I'll agree with you on this one. I'll put them in A tier. All right.
Next up, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm gonna put them in the B tier at the moment. I was a little bit, hesitant putting him in the B, maybe putting him in the C tier. Their record is currently 2-3. However, I put them in the B tier just because of how many minutes Giannis has been playing. In the bubble, he's been playing 28 minutes per game, averaging 31, 11, and 5 assists, and he's shooting 63% from the field. Although the three-pointer is still an issue, we've seen him airball a few shots. If he would have played over 30 minutes per game, I think me and you could have easily put Milwaukee at A to S if Giannis would have played more minutes. Other than that, most notable performances for Milwaukee, we have Chris Middleton averaging 21.5 points per game, 50% from the field, and 42% from 3 in 6.5 attempts. And for me, a huge X factor is Brook Lopez averaging 22 points per game, 45% from the field, and 3.3 blocks per game. Although, as I mentioned, they're 2-3 in record. They are first in blocks and top 5 in points. I can see that with how Giannis has been playing and Brook Lopez has been playing and Milton as well. They have decent role players such as George Hill and Dante DiVincenzo, you know what Dante DiVincenzo does. He's absolutely amazing role player. In my opinion, he was a huge steal of the draft. But anyway, I would say putting them at C is a little dishonorment towards Milwaukee because Giannis hasn't been playing that many minutes. So I think they're good enough to be at B.
I actually do have him at C tier. Giannis is playing just a little bit under what he was averaging over the season. He is, Giannis is averaging less minutes than people like Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah.
Giannis is averaging just a little bit over 30 minutes a game, and now in the bubble he's averaging 28.8, almost 29 minutes. Basically the same numbers. But their record is 2-3. For a team that was at one point gunning for a 70-win season, losing to teams like Brooklyn, like it shouldn't happen. Like for teams like Milwaukee. So I would put them in B tier, but knowing what they can do and knowing like the potential that team has, I decided to put them at C tier.
Yeah, I guess a little counter argument I can come up with is because they're trying to rest their stars for the playoffs. They're trying to rest Giannis for the playoffs, so they aren't playing him as much. So I put them in the B tier just because I feel like if they really wanted to gun for it, they would play Giannis way more minutes if they wanted to go for a win every game. I wouldn't, not that they've taken a step down, more like they're just preparing for the playoffs. That's why I put them in B. My bad.
I remember Budenholzer once said, he was asked a question as to why didn't Giannis play more minutes in the playoffs? Like he was playing like 36 or something, and the question was why didn't he play like 40? And the answer was like if you can beat Milwaukee with Giannis playing 36 minutes, like you can probably beat Milwaukee. Like you deserve to beat Milwaukee.
Oh, okay.
That was his argument. So, and knowing that, like Giannis is still playing a decent amount of minutes, and for them to I know they've gotten their first seed locked, but even their bench is really good. So I'm not expecting them to lose 3 games over their 5, as well as the scrimmage games. They haven't been playing good in those as well, even though I don't really think you can count those. But I think I'm a strong believer that they belong in the C tier currently.
Okay, I understand that.
You agree with me?
I agree with you. Yeah, I think C is fair. All
right, so I'll do that.
That sounds pretty good. Next up, we have the Toronto Raptors. They can go straight up to the A tier for me. They are 4-1. They beat the Los Angeles Lakers. They're just continuing to prove that their culture, their coaching staff, and their rotations, their players are all solid. They've been really, really good for them. Fred VanVleet averaging almost 20 points per game, 42% from 3 with 1.8 steals per game. Fred VanVleet was a man on a mission. I think he dropped over 30 this one game he played. Was it versus LA? I think it was.
Over 30. I don't know. I'll check that out while you talk. So
no, but regardless, I know he had a 30-point game this bubble at least. Siakam, I expected him to average more than 17 points, but what makes 17 points per game fine for me is that he shoots 40% from 3 during the bubble. So for me, that is completely fine. And then we have Kyle Lowry, the ultimate veteran presence you need, the ultimate championship experience player you need, averaging 16.2 points, 6.2 assists, and 2 steals per game. And how I see Toronto, at least how I've seen them do so far, is that as a team, they are 5th in 3-point percentage with 38% from 3. So I can see Terrence Davis pull some weight, Matt Thomas, OG Anunoby, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and more. So I'd say Toronto is deserving of an A tier.
Yeah, same for me, A tier. They would be a strong S tier if they didn't lose to Boston, because that Boston game, like solidified the fact that they should not be S tier just because of the fact that they got blown out pretty badly. Um, yeah, and you can see like some of the things they should focus on. Of course, shots weren't hitting in that game. I want to see Pascal Siakam, scoring more because he's currently averaging like under 18 points per game in the bubble, and we know what he can do. I think over the season he's like a 24 point per game scorer.
Around, yeah, over 20 easily.
I'll check. 23 points per game. Yeah, so he definitely has to step up. Looking at the other stats, Ibaka, only averaging 8.8 points, shooting 25% from three. Yeah, the shooting has been bad, as well as Norman Powell. He's the fourth leading scorer with 11.2, but his shooting percentage has been bad. They just have to get, like, the looks they're getting are fine. They just have to hit their shots. Against Boston's defense, they didn't really get to do that. So that's why I have them at A tier. But against teams like the Lakers and stuff like that, they played really well. They played tremendous, and their calling point is definitely their defense, not their offense. And on the defensive end, they're great. And I agree with all the points you said about the culture they have and everything. Even with Kawhi leaving, they're an elite team, and I think they deserve to be in the A tier. So I think we both agree on that.
Yeah, with that, for me, it also solidifies that Nick Nurse is Coach of the Year this season.
For sure.
It solidifies his Coach of the Year spot, losing in my opinion, the third best player in the league. Like, in my opinion, the top 5 players, anybody could be anywhere, and I still wouldn't necessarily argue other than Giannis being number 1 this season. But, losing a easily top 5 player, arguably top 3 with Kawhi, and still being on the 2nd seed, Nick Nurse plays
Impressive.
a huge part. But next up we have the Dallas Mavericks, and they were letting me down quite a bit this bubble. For me, they're on the C tier. They are 2-3. Although Doncic has been on a tear, averaging a triple-double of 33, 11, 11, he's shooting 30% from 3, but that won't take away anything that him and Porzingis have been carrying this team in the bubble. Porzingis also playing well, averaging 29.4 points and 10 rebounds, but man, the 3-point percentage is not good. He's shooting 29% from 3. But what worries me with Dallas, at least, with when I was checking up in the stats, is the field goal percentage. Nobody, and I'm saying nobody except one player, has over 50% from the field, meaning inside the paint with 2-pointers, and Boban is the only one with over 50%, and he barely gets any minutes. Everybody else below 50% from the field. And as a team, Dallas, they're second to last in field goal percentage with 43.3. And out of 22 teams, I think, they're 20th in 3-point percentage with 31.5. I want them to step it up because I believe they can make noise in the playoffs if everything goes well. But right now, I have to put them in the C tier.
Yeah, they have no players having over 40% on 3-pointers. And knowing their offense, that drive and kick, creating a lot of 3-point opportunities, you would like to see at least 1 or 2 players have at least 40%. Mainly Seth Curry. I'm a firm believer that Seth Curry is a tremendous shooter, but currently he's averaging only 25%. I had them in the B tier because all the games they played, almost all of them were close. They lost in an overtime game against the Rockets. That was a nice game. They lost against the Suns, who have been tremendous. They beat the Kings. They did lose to the Clippers, but it was a good game up until like the last minutes where the Clippers went ahead. And then, of course, that game against the Milwaukee Bucks. I think that game made me want them go from a C tier to a B tier, just because they can show they can ball with anybody in the league. So, and I guess for a team that is 7th seed and knowing what they can do, I think they I think they did how I expected them to do. Same with Philadelphia for what they have right now. So that's why I did put them at the B tier. But I want to see if you have any counter arguments against that.
I was looking at the games. They were getting quite a few open looks. It's just that the fact that they weren't hitting. I can see your argument from the B tier, but knowing that you have an MVP candidate and you have an All-Star in Porzingis, and you've had several really good All-Stars who can, like, you have 3 other players who can produce more than 15 points. I expected more from them, to be honest. I didn't expect less than 50% from the field, knowing that they can easily outdo that mark. They've outdone that mark during the regular season, but during the playoffs, or no, I mean during the bubble, they haven't done that. That's why I put them in the C tier, just because I expect them to be at least a bit more efficient. But maybe it's because, the bubble's starting again, they haven't played in months. But I'd put them in the C tier just because I expected them to, at least be 50-50, have a 500 record. Not below that.
It's hard when you have 5 games, though. You can't have a 500 record.
But
you mean like 3-2 instead of 2-3?
For example, like that. Yeah.
So if they did beat the Suns, you would put them in the B tier.
100%. If they would be in my opinion, if they have a plus record, B tier minimum.
All right. I'll agree. I'll put them in the C tier.
All right. Next up, we have the Denver Nuggets here. For Denver, I put them in the B tier. Denver, they're 3-2, but of course, what you get with Jokic and company is that you get that the team is first in assists with 28.2. 28.2 assists per game. That's a lot, and they're also second in field goal percentage, which is pretty good. Jokic averages 22 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. And we also have Michael Porter Jr., who would just blow up on the scene. Prove to people why he should have been the number 1 overall pick instead of the end of the lottery. With 25.6 points per game and 42% from 3 with 7 rebounds. Potentially with how they've been averaging during with how the team's standings and ranks during the bubble with field goal percentage and all that stuff, I was really considering putting them in A, but they're in B just because they're 3-2 and they lost against Miami by 20. That's the only time I haven't. So I think B is so far fair.
All right, I have Denver in the A tier actually. I do agree with your points with them being in the B tier just because the way they've played so far. But my counter argument is that they've been missing a lot of players. Jamal Murray only played in the last game, which was a huge win against Utah Jazz. But I think you remember in the scrimmage games, they had that all big lineup.
Oh, yeah.
It's because they were missing a lot of players. They couldn't even do 5-on-5 training. So I think for them, getting Murray back and how they fared so far, I think it deserves an A tier for me.
Okay. I personally think they should stay in the B tier just because they're 3-2. You can mention the injuries, but
oh hey, you put all right. Never mind.
Like I understand where you're going with what I'm gonna say next, but I think if you go with pure record and what they can do, I think personally B is fine. Just because I want them to do more in the playoffs. Because last year, they lost versus Portland, and I thought Denver was gonna win. But yeah, I can see why you can put them in the A. And now that I think about it, I think A is fine. I think between A and B is solid.
I think if we add like more tiers, I think we could have a much more similar,
much more in-depth chart. Like much more in-depth chart.
We have a similar opinion as well, but yeah, I think now like when we differ between tiers, it's we have to choose between one of them.
Yeah. When I think about it, they've been I think they're in between A and B, but I agree with you that they've been more on A than B. So I think A is fine.
All right.
Next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies, who just completely dropped the ball. I'm sorry, Memphis, but they gotta be D tier, man. They're 1-5 in the bubble. They lost Jaren Jackson Jr., John Morant, who is the Rookie of the Year. He's shooting 39% from the field and 25% from 3. The team is second to last in 3-point schedule. Even though they have a hard schedule, they've been playing really, I'd say they've been playing okay towards their standards with how they've been playing in the bubble. Because although their schedule has been really hard, they played hard all the games, and the most points they lost by is 10. However, that won't change the fact that they're D tier and they're only 1-5, and I don't think they're gonna stay on that 8 seed for long.
Yeah, I think I can just already put them in the D tier. I also have them in the D tier. Pretty disappointing, knowing what they can do. Also sad, they lost Jaren Jackson. It was Grizzlies' top point scorer, 25.5. He also played great defensively. So it's just tough seeing them right now losing all the games. They're definitely short of, rotational players that they can play, and they're just getting beat down the stretch and close games, but they lose. And they're kind of close to falling out of that 8th seed, which I thought before the bubble started to be a pretty easy lock for them, that they would probably win like at least 3 games. But currently they have 1 game with 2 tough games coming up against the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee. So it's basically going to be either Memphis is 9th seed and they crawl back into playoffs, or they're just going to be completely out of it. It's really hard for me seeing Memphis get the 8th seed currently. And for a Grizzlies fan, I think you could be disappointed from what you're seeing, but it's unfortunate, and they definitely have a bright future. But for now, I think we both agree on the D tier.
Yeah, I can add a comment to that. I remember like a few weeks ago, I saw this one video, and they were talking about how certain teams would fare up in the bubble, because some teams and some players, they need to feed off the crowd in order to get going.
Yeah.
And mostly with inexperienced teams featuring a lot of rookies, they do all these flashy plays, they do the crossovers, they do the dunks, they do all these flashy things. But when you come towards the end of the stretch, where the inexperience shows, I guess that's where you can see Memphis drop the ball a bit, because when you don't have, the crowd on your side chanting defense, and you don't get that, excitement that you get from the crowd, I can see how Memphis dropped a little bit.
That's a great point. I completely agree.
Because, like, in my opinion, Giannis, he's just going to fare well completely in the bubble because he doesn't need the crowd. Like, I can see how Joel Embiid needs the crowd because, he tries to hype everything up and start stuff, even though he's been playing amazing in the bubble. Like, players like Giannis who have that Mamba mentality, they don't need the crowd to prove a point that they're dominant. So, unfortunately, going back to Memphis, bright future ahead of them, 100% once the crowd comes back. Jaw is only going to get better. Dylan Brooks is going to get better. Grayson Allen, in my opinion, he can be potentially like a Patrick Beverley defender, especially with how he played in college. And Jaren Jackson Jr., he'll do well as well. But it's only bright for Memphis from here, at least.
All right.
Next up, we have the San Antonio Spurs. And for me, they are 100% deserving of an A tier. They are one of the biggest surprises for me this season. I did not expect them to crawl up like this because they lost LaMarcus Aldridge. But that didn't stop them from winning 66% of their games with a 4-2 record. They're 6th in points with 122 points. They are 4th in field goal percentage, and they are 2nd in free throws made. DeMar DeRozan is averaging 21.5 points per game with 56% from the field, with also 6 assists. Comparing his playing style to Toronto, in San Antonio, you can see how Pop has influenced him with, increasing assists and rebounds. And I remember I had him on my fantasy team. And that guy was nearly getting triple doubles, like constantly getting, for example, 18, 9, and 9, 29 and 8, etc. So I can see how DeMar has improved a lot with his all-around game, and I can see how Pop and the San Antonio system has helped with that. And that's at least helped them contribute to wins. And then we also have players such as Derek White with 20 points per game, almost 44% from 3 with 4 rebounds and 4 assists. He's one of my favorite underrated players in the league. And there's also Rudy Gay with 19 points and 44% from 3. And I guess a common saying, of course, I've been saying so far is the 3-point percentage in the bubble. Shooters have been hitting a lot more threes. I'm noticing that a lot more players are getting plus 40 on the 3-point percentage. And there's quite a few on Houston and a few on San Antonio as well. But San Antonio has been winning their games not only because the ball movement system and free throws made. What I see is really underrated is their depth, their bench depth. They have 8 players averaging double digits in scoring. For example, Patty Mills with 10, for example. So yeah, I think they're worthy of A tier.
Agreed. Again, I have them in the A tier, mainly because they have the 4-2 record. They beat teams like the Utah Jazz, the Grizzlies, who are fighting for that playoff spot when Jaren wasn't injured, the Kings. But they did lose a tight game to the Sixers and a tight game to the Nuggets. Maybe that's why they're not S tier. If they would go 5-1, they probably would be S tier, just because they're missing LaMarcus Aldridge, and for like the team they have right now, which I didn't think was that good, but they proved me wrong, as you said with the bench depth. Players like Keldon Johnson getting minutes, shooting at a 60% field goal and 63% from three. Obviously, the shooting clip isn't as big as other players like Derek White and DeMar DeRozan, but it's a solid piece, and he's only 20 years old. And a lot of the players they have, excluding Patty Mills, Bellinelli, or Rudy Gay, they're pretty young, and those players for like the end of the first round picks, they've been doing pretty good for San Antonio, and for what they have right now, I think A tier is spot on.
Hey, that's pretty. Hey, San Antonio surprised many people. That's all I can say so far.
They surprised me at least. I thought they were gonna stay on the 12th or 11th place they were, but they've crawled up and they're one of the last teams remaining trying to qualify for that 8th seed.
Oh yeah. Pleasant surprise for the West, or pleasant surprise for the people in West, and a really pleasant surprise for NBA fans because the pressure will be starting to mount for the play-in spots. There's so many teams who are half a game behind Memphis that anything could happen.
Yeah.
It's just like for me as an NBA fan, it's exciting thinking about it. Next up, we have the Utah Jazz, and for me, I put the Utah Jazz in the C tier. They are currently 2-4. They're bottom 3 in field goal percentage, and they're 16th in points. With what you get currently from Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, you get what you obviously expect. With Mitchell, you get almost 24 points per game. However, he's shooting a little bit less than 40% from the field and around 38% from 3. So I'm happy he's shooting okay from 3, but the field goal percentage, I wish it'd be a little bit better, but it is what it is when you're 2-4 and you're playing against okay teams. Rudy Gobert is averaging, 16.5 points, shooting 65% from the field, with almost 13 rebounds and 2 blocks, shutting down the league before the bubble, and during the bubble, he's playing really well. So that's good to see as well. And also Mike Conley averaging 20 points per game with almost 6 assists. I'd say that's one of the only bright spots Utah has so far in the bubble. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to put them in the C tier. But it won't stop that, for example, Conley and Gobert and Mitchell are doing what they're usually doing, scoring the ball and doing whatever they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I had them in the B tier at the start, but after looking at the stats again and everything, I think I have to agree with you and put them at the C tier instead. Mainly because, as we talked about in one of the previous podcast episodes, was it? That when Bojan Bogdanovic was still healthy and when they traded for Jordan Clarkson, Utah had the number 1 offense in the league. And after that, in the bubble, you can see their offense has fallen off a little bit. Jordan Clarkson has been their main man off the bench, only shooting 36% field goal and 32% from 3. Not something you want from your main off the bench scorer. So that was the biggest thing for me that I don't like. Obviously, you have Donovan Mitchell as well, isn't shooting good but still leading the team. He's still clutch with the game against Denver that he had. Sadly, they lost. Maybe if they would have won that game, they would be B tier, but they didn't. I think Mike Conley, as you said, he had a rough start to the season, but now averaging almost 20 points per game. That's pretty good for them, trying to learn a new system first year. But yeah, I think what they've done so far hasn't been really impressive, and they can definitely do better. But obviously that Bojan Bogdanovic really, really hurts. So that's why I have to agree with you and put them at C tier.
Yeah, I remember during the regular season, like the Utah Jazz, they're a roller coaster team. I remember there's this one stat or fact that happened that they won 8 games in a row and then they lost 8 games in a row. It reminds me, I think Phoenix did that once as well, where they won 11 and lost 11 in a row. Something like that. So Utah Jazz.
Up and down team.
Up and down team. If it goes up, it goes up. Let's just hope it's during the playoffs. That's all I hope.
Yep.
I wish I could see that Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs, that played well against OKC. That was such a great series by him.
Rookie year getting to the semifinals after losing an all-star in Gordon Hayward. That was special.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Damn. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Mitchell will do this year as well. He'll only get better from here, though.
Agreed.
But, agreed. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Clippers, and for me, they are going straight to the B tier. They are 500. They're 3-3. Kawhi Leonard playing ballistic with 29 points per game, 51% from 3. Paul George, 25 points per game, and 51% from 3 as well. Other than the fact that, I wish they'd be, for example, 4-2, which is what I expected around from them. The Clippers are 5th in field goal percentage, and at 3-point percentage, they are 2nd. But even though they're 3-3, I'd say they're not out of it necessarily. I'd say they're fine, just because they still have players shooting at a decent clip. So I think B is completely fair.
Yeah, I like that now at least we have the same opinion. I also have Clippers at the B tier. Mainly because we know what they can do when their roster is fully healthy. Or not like it's not healthy, it's just that not all the players are in the bubble and ready to play. Yeah, unfortunately they did lose to the Lakers in the first game. But they did beat the teams like the Pelicans, Mavericks, the Trailblazers, even with their third unit ending the game. But yeah, I think a loss versus the Nets kind of made me go for the B tier at the moment. I don't think they're really, trying as hard because they probably know they have the 2nd seed. But it would be, out of
the management.
Yeah.
Load
but out of
management.
the performance I've seen so far, I haven't been impressed. But I also haven't seen the full team, so it's kind of hard to judge. B tier for now.
To be honest, I think they're gonna miss Trez. They've missed Trez. You can clearly see that they've missed Trez, like Montrezl Harrell. I think, obviously a 6-man candidate, and I can clearly see how they would have needed Montrez in certain situations that Zubac can't necessarily do yet, even though Zubac is a perfect role player for what the Clippers need. But next up for me, the first S tier team, the Phoenix,
No debate.
The Phoenix Suns. I see so much of Kobe Bryant in Devin Booker at the moment. Is there anything else we can say that we already know? They are 5-0. They were underdogs before the bubble. Nobody expected them to come close to playoff contention. Not even I did, because of how they were in the regular season. They played themselves into playoff contention with a 5-0 record. Devin Booker is averaging almost 30 points per game, and Ayton is averaging a double-double of 17 and 10. They're playing really well as well. They're playing really good. They beat the Clippers, they beat the Heat, they beat the Indiana, and they beat Dallas. And a huge factor for them is that, they're not too much up and they're not too much down with the field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. They're in the middle. They're 8th in field goal percentage with 47.7%, and they're 7th in 3-point percentage with 37.4%. But most of it is heroics from Devin Booker. Devin Booker has been on a mission this bubble.
Yeah, completely agreed. It's been a roller coaster ride for them the whole season. It started off pretty well, as I mentioned before. But then you had that DeAndre Ayton incident, and then they kind of fell off. Also some injuries. I think Aaron Baines got an injury. But looking now, they're a completely different team. They have the confidence, they have depth, which I didn't know they were going to have. Players like Cam Johnson and Cam Payne. DeAndre Ayton starting to shoot 3-pointers, which we saw in college, but we really didn't see in his first year of his NBA career.
Yeah.
Or the second year.
Didn't he? He hit his first 3 in the bubble, didn't he?
Yeah, and ever since he's just shot them. 1.4 attempts. Shooting 43%, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Man, you
So
you
yeah,
can clearly see how, no crowd, no distractions to help players really show like how good they really are. Because when you think about it, NBA players can like I think any NBA player can drop off any NBA player in a 1v1. I mean, there's a reason they're all professionals. I mean,
yeah,
you get where I'm
exactly.
coming from, right? Because,
Yeah,
you can say, oh yeah, for example, Jared Dudley, he's trash. He, not that he's trash, but he's not getting that many minutes and he's not, doing that much, but he can drop off anybody in a 1v1, for example.
I
Like
saw a
any,
video
and,
of I saw a video of like Quincy Pondexter training,
yeah.
and I don't know, Quincy Pondexter. I think he's out of the league, but I saw his workout, and he was doing like some fadeaway drills. Boy, that guy was milking everything, and like for a guy that's outside the league, knowing what he can do, like it just makes you appreciate, what all the NBA players are doing, and like how skilled they actually are.
Yeah, and also how hard they're really working because they're professional for a reason. And speaking of Pondexter with the workouts, I remember I saw Jimmer Fredette once. Man, I really wish Jimmer Fredette became something, but I remember I saw him doing this 3-point thing for charity, I think, and he hit like 90 something threes out of 100, just casually. So it's crazy how much talent that is still outside of the NBA. Even some solid European prospects, I believe, could average 20 in the NBA. Personally,
He did become something. He became a valuable piece for people playing 2K. I think Jimmer Fredette he has a great jump shot, not only in real life but also in 2K. And I think it was just a joy to play in real life and in 2K. And it's just sad that he didn't get to do the same thing, with the Rockets or whatever chances he got in the NBA. But at least he's doing good in China.
hey, I think he's the man in China at the moment, or I at least know Lance Stevenson is. Lance Stevenson's having a blast in China at the moment.
Yeah, but Phoenix Suns definitely S tier. No debate on that.
Yeah, back to Phoenix, 100% S tier. Next up, we have the Portland Trailblazers. They were really close, and I'm saying really close for me at the S tier, but they're going for me at the A tier. They are 4-2, but it's a feel-good story at the moment with Damian Lillard averaging 33 points, 47% from the field, 38% from three. It's amazing, absolutely amazing efficiency, knowing how many shots he takes a game at a very high volume. We also have CJ McCollum averaging 21 points on 44% from three. A very happy sight for me with these next two players, with Yusuf Nurkic and Gary Trent Jr. Yusuf Nurkic came back, 18.8 points, 10.5 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks per game. It looks like while he was injured, he just decided to become a monster and just decide to attempt more threes, because he has attempted more threes now. He's been hitting more threes now, so it feels good to watch him come back, and he is a clear part of their success as well. And then and now for one of the biggest stories, I'd say, in the bubble is Gary Trent Jr. 18 points per game, but shooting 57% from three on 8.5 attempts. That's absolutely crazy. Like,
Do you think he can keep it up? I don't think he can. That's way too good.
To be honest, I don't know. But knowing with how, you have no distractions on the court and shooting is a lot more easier, you see many players keep up 40%, which you normally wouldn't see. For example, I would never expect Pascal Siakam to shoot 40% from three. I'd expect around 35%, more or less. But nevertheless, I could see maybe Gary Trent shooting around 40% from three during the playoffs. Maybe. Just because, it's the playoffs, the game slows down, it's more intense, and the stakes are a lot higher. But enough about that. But about the tier, they're an A tier because they are currently third in total points scored in 123.3, and they're second in three-pointers made with 15.8. And Gary Trent Jr. is taking around half of those with 8.5. Now that I just realized it. So yeah, Portland, in my opinion, well deserving A, almost S, because they were quite low down in the playoffs. But knowing Damian Lillard, he'll easily will his team back. But yeah, A tier for me.
Yeah, I think same for me. I got him in A tier. Not really S tier because they lost to the Clippers. Lillard bricked those two free throws. That was kind of harsh for them, as well as they didn't quite complete the comeback against the Celtics. They lost there. But overall, they've been much better with Nurkic instead of Hassan Whiteside and with Gary Trent Jr.'s resurgence. They currently have five players scoring 16 points or above, which is really nice to see. Another thing from Nurkic, it's it's actually interesting seeing how, like, he had that injury. He doesn't really need time to get back in his groove. Like perhaps you saw Gordon Hayward the first year where he got back from his broken leg injury. He wasn't really himself. You could see that. But in the second year is much better. For Nurkic, he came back straight up like nothing happened. Back to the same stats as he was, just a monster. Plus, he's shooting threes now, so it's amazing.
Yeah, he even baptized Bol as well. Just completely dunked on him. Like, I don't think I would have dared to try and posterize someone after an injury.
Yeah, but they've been playing really good. Obviously, the couple losses kind of are going to hit them in the back if they don't make it. But I think A tier is deserving.
Yeah, solid A tier. Solid A tier. Next up for me, we have a very, we have the D tier team, Sacramento. Sacramento.
No debate.
And the only thing I can say is that they're 0-5. De'Aaron Fox has been okay.
No, they won one game, I think.
I don't know if they won one game.
They are 1-5. Yeah.
My bad. They're 1-5, but it doesn't change the fact that they're eliminated. Marvin Bagley, he reminds me of Joel Embiid with huge potential, but injures himself all the time. I've seen him more time off the floor than on the floor, and it's unfortunate because I know he can turn into something. But yeah, I don't want to go too much into it. The Kings are eliminated from the bubble. They are a D tier for me.
Yeah, as you said, Marvin Bagley made out of glass. Hasn't really showed much, even though we know what he can do, like the games he did play. All I have to say is fire Luke Walton.
Man.
Like, what is he doing? Why is Buddy Hield on the bench? I cannot fathom what he's doing. It's absolutely crazy seeing a player like that who's like, there's starter players. Then there are some players who are like almost all-stars. Like, you could put them in the all-star discussion if like a lot of players were injured.
For example, Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray, De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield. I think they're all players that are more than good starters. And, they're definitely great contributors. I don't see why Buddy Hield is going off the bench. They had one good season with Dave Yeager. Can you help me?
Dave Yeager.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, but they had one good season, and Vlade Divac was like, hey, this is not us. We have to fire him. So, yeah, they bring in Luke Walton, and they're back to their mediocrity. Happy days. I mean, D tier, baby.
It's not like they were going to contend for a chip anyway, but if it was going better with Yeager anyway, like they were clearly getting better, like with Dave Yeager.
They could have made the playoffs. Their streak continues. What is it now, like 13, 14 years?
14 years with not being in the playoffs.
Disappointing.
Man, disappointing. And next up, even more disappointing with New Orleans. I don't even want to get started with how disappointed I am in New Orleans. Watching the games, I'm looking at Zion. He looks a little bit out of shape. He hasn't been playing many minutes. And when I'm looking at, with Gentry, it looks like he's playing him just so he'll get ready for next season. Not this season. Well, I haven't seen much from many of the players, but did not expect them to lose that many games as they did with one of the easiest schedules in the league. So yeah. D tier for me, man.
D tier for me as well. The only wins came against the Wizards and the Grizzlies. It seems like Williamson is not only out of shape, but his conditioning is bad. And you kind of would expect more from a guy who has that much potential and that much weight put on him to be successful. And they just haven't been looking the way they were before the season got canceled. And it's just disappointing. I was really hoping, what I saw is Adam Silver made this so that New Orleans could get in to face the Lakers, for more revenue, but I don't think the Pelicans really wanted that. You can just see by their record. It's been kind of disappointing, and for a team that has the easiest schedule to be 2-4, I think that's D tier deserving. Not much more to say for me.
D tier.
Disappointing for me.
Next up, we have it's the Rockets. For me, they are A tier team. For me, they are currently 4-1. In my opinion, the bubble is molded perfectly after what Houston is looking for. James Harden averaging 33, 8.5 assists per game. Although he is shooting 30% from three with 10 attempts, he's shooting 90% from the line. But before I keep going, although there are many players in the league who have 100% from the line, James Harden is shooting 90% from the line on 12 attempts, which I think is the most in the league. So I'd say that's a huge plus for Houston as well. Russell Westbrook, you know what you're getting from him. Post-Capella trade, a free drive to the rim with nobody clogging the paint. So Westbrook has been averaging 25.5 points, 8 assists, almost 7 rebounds. Playing well in the bubble, playing hard in the bubble. I saw even in the scrimmage games, Harden and Westbrook, they were playing as if it was a game 7. But as a team where there's no surprise, Houston has the most threes made in the bubble with 19.5 threes made per game. And that's contributed huge to what they're doing, and it's been clearly working with their 4-1 record. So that's A tier for me.
A tier for me as well. 4-1 record. They've done everything you would expect them to do. Nothing more than expected and nothing less. Just exactly as you want the Houston Rockets to be. Even though they can be streaky at sometimes, because 3-point shooting, but they've been exceptionally well. Even though they don't have that much players shooting above 40%, they only have Austin Rivers, Ben McLemore. I guess Daniel House has fallen off a little bit. He's now at 36% shooting. They still find ways to win, even without Russell Westbrook. And as you said, post-Capella trade, nobody clogging the paint, many shooters to kick out to. I think they've done exactly what everyone expected them to do. So I think that's an A tier.
All right, good. Next up, we have the Miami Heat. For me, I was debating between either B or C, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards the C tier. They're 2-3. They are 5th in 3-pointers made. They're 2nd in free throw percentage at 85%, and they're 3rd in assists at 27.2. With Adebayo and Dragic, you get 15 points from Adebayo, almost 8.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 45% from the field. And Dragic, who I think has been one of their leading scorers, with 19, with also 4.3 assists and 2 steals. That has played a huge part, but what has played an even bigger part, in my opinion, is with their spacing. With Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero. Duncan Robinson is averaging 17.5 points per game with 41% from 3. And Tyler Hero is averaging 15% with 50% from the field. I don't know about the 3. I think around the 3-pointer, it was around 30%. Yeah.
32, yeah.
But I'm putting them in the C tier just because they're 2-3. And with Butler gone, I understand why they lost some games. But still, I expected so much. I expected a tad bit more from Miami. I expected 3-2 to put them at B tier. But for me, they're fringe of a B tier. They're like C+.
I did have them at B tier just because of the main argument that they didn't have Butler. And they still beat teams like Boston and almost beat the Milwaukee Bucks. That's why I had them at B tier, knowing what they can do without any superstar, just with basically role players. Even though you can't really count Bam as a role player, he's an all-star as well. But, players who can create their own shot. They don't really have anything outside Goran Dragic when Jimmy Butler is not healthy. So what I saw from them, close games, obviously. I guess you could expect more for them, but for what they did with what they had, I decided to go with B tier with them.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, when you made the argument with that they almost beat Milwaukee, I completely forgot about that. That's enough to convince me for them to be out of B tier. So I think B
Especially
tier.
since we discussed the fact that they're the team that can upset them, and we almost saw that again without Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I think scratch whatever I said with C tier. I think B tier is perfectly fine.
All right.
Next up we have is the Brooklyn Nets, and Jesus Christ, the Brooklyn Nets, they are deserving of a B tier. I thought they were gonna be around D to C, but nah, they are at a B tier right now with a 3-2 record. Most notably, they beat Milwaukee by 3. Still, beating Milwaukee is impressive in itself, and how they've been doing that mostly is that they're second in the league in assists, with 27.2 assists per game. And we've had several players, stepping up. We've had Karis LeVert averaging 21, Joe Harris averaging almost 20 with 56% from 3. We have Jared Allen averaging 16, and Timothy Lowe-Cabarrot, who's averaging 14. Those 4, I'd say, not are the main reason, but they're a huge reason that they've been keeping this team up afloat with their 3-2 record. But yeah, I think B tier is really solid for them. So I think B is where they should be at the moment, with players stepping up, and ball movement's been key with second in the league in assists.
I had them at A tier, just because they have literally no healthy player. Everybody is injured except for Karis LeVert, who's, don't get me wrong, he's a great player, but that's basically it. They have no backup centers. Their lineup is depleted, and they're 4-2 without that. They beat the Clippers, they beat the Bucks. I think that's more than enough to say they're A tier, if not S tier, because they've definitely exceeded my expectations. Before the bubble resumed, I thought they were gonna maybe drop out to the Washington Wizards because I thought the Brooklyn Nets were so bad. But now they've locked in the 7th seed, and they don't even have to play Milwaukee. They can play Toronto in the first round. I think that's definitely deserving of an A tier, A plus for me.
Yeah, I think A tier is good. I think A tier is smart.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, knowing that they beat some of the biggest teams in the league with the lineups that they have and the players that they've lost. I think now that I think about it, A tier is, I think A tier is where it's at right now.
All right.
Next up, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. I put them at B tier. They're 3-2 currently. Chris Paul averaging 18 and 7, 90% from the line with 2 steals. It's a Chris Paul stat line. It's what you expect. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander averaging almost 17 points per game, 4 rebounds and 4 assists. And then we have Dennis Schroeder, who in my opinion has dropped off a little bit. He's averaging 13 compared to his 19 before the bubble. But he's shooting 0% from 3 on 2 attempts per game. I at least expect him to make 1, so the stats will look a little bit prettier. But I didn't expect 0%. But we also have Gallinari, averaging 17.2 points per game, 45% from 3, almost 50% from the field. But although it looks really good on paper that they're 3-2, they've been struggling with points and field goal percentage. They're lurking a little bit towards, the lower end compared to the other teams in regards to points and field goal percentage. But with the record being 3-2 and you get the usual stat lines from majority of your players, I think B tier is solid.
Yeah, I'll agree with the B tier with you. Just because they're 3-2, they look great in the scrimmage games, absolutely amazing. But I guess we haven't really seen that much of a consistency going back to or going into the actual bubble games, the regular season games. So I had them at B tier for that exact thing. And you basically told everything about the stats, so I'm not even going to comment about that. So B tier looks fine for me.
Yeah, sounds good. Next up, we can go with B tier again. I have the Boston Celtics. I was really close putting them up at the A tier, but I'd say they're more B plus than A minus, so I put them at B. They are currently 4-2. Jason Tatum averaging 21 points and 6 rebounds, shooting 41% from 3 on a little bit over 7 attempts. And Jaylen Brown, who's been Boston's most consistent player, averaging around the same numbers as Jason Tatum, 7 rebounds and 21.7. compared to Jason Tatum's 21.3, so it's nearly identical. But he's also shooting 43% from 3, which is absolutely amazing. And he's been, as I said, their most consistent player this bubble. He's proving that he's worth that $115 million 4-year contract. Even more. I'd say he even proved himself even more than that contract with what we're currently seeing in the bubble. And also, as another feel-good moment, we have Gordon Hayward, who's been stepping up really nicely. He had the amazing game versus Orlando yesterday. He looked like he was a man on fire, man on a mission. You know, he looked like, Keanu Reeves just activating himself in the movie, just taking out everybody. So he's been averaging, 18.7 points per game, almost 50% field goal. For me, as a fourth option, that's completely enough. I mean, I'd put Kemba, Jason, and Jalen over Hayward in this specific lineup. But with 18.7 points and almost hitting half of your shots, I'd say that's perfectly solid. But as a team, Boston, they're 4th in points, they're 5th in the league in steals, and 5th in 3-point percentage. That's enough to persuade me that they are solid B. Almost a weak A, but I'd put them in B.
Yeah, I do have them in the A tier because they are 4-2. They did have that disappointing loss to Miami without Jimmy Butler, and the other loss was a close game against Milwaukee where Jason Tatum only scored 3 points.
Don't get us started on that game.
Yeah, if you exclude that, they've blown out the Raptors, blown out the Brooklyn Nets. Who else did they win? They had the overtime again against Orlando. Pretty close, a bit too close for my comfort, but they still won. So yeah, and the Blazers, those are the 4 wins. But yeah, I like to have them at the A tier. I can see what you mean with the B tier. I could kind of go there if you look at the way they've won some of the games. Like, way too close for comfort with the Orlando game, couldn't really get going. But then you look at the games like Toronto, who's in a second round matchup potentially, and the way they blew them out, and the way they were so close to beating Milwaukee with Jason Tatum only scoring 3 points, and the refs absolutely, playing a game in Milwaukee's favor.
Yeah,
I have to put him at A tier for me.
Giannis had 7 fouls that game. 7 fouls.
Yeah.
Man.
But I have to put them in A tier. At least on my list, they're in A tier.
All right. I'd say that's fine. They're teetering for A and B for me, but I don't argue with A tier. I wouldn't argue.
We have a lot of teams in the A tier.
Yeah.
A lot of teams playing solid.
A lot of teams playing solid. It's what you expect. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Lakers. For me, the Los Angeles Lakers are a C tier. Don't want to put them at D because I wouldn't put them that low down. The Lakers, they are scoring the least points per game out of all the teams in the bubble with a little bit of barely over 100. They're last in the 3-point percentage with 25.4, as I've mentioned. LeBron is leading the team in scoring with 21. But 28% 3-point efficiency, which is something you don't want. Also with his second star, although Anthony Davis, he's averaging 20. He has barely less than 40% field goal, and he's had some awful games during the bubble, which I don't like. And Danny Green, it feels like, whenever he shoots a 3, he's just gonna brick every time. That's what I've seen every time watching the Lakers play, at least with the bubble. So for me, I'd put them in the C tier.
Yeah, C tier for me as well. Really disappointing, but it's not like they've lost every single game. They've still won some pretty good games, one including the Clippers as well. Davis has been disappointing. Danny Green can't hit anything. But yeah, for me, I just expected more from the Lakers. Haven't really showed me anything. But as I said in the podcast, I think it's good for them to face these teams so they can make adjustments and learn from that. But currently I just haven't seen that from them, so it's a C tier.
All right. I wish they would be higher just because I want to see Anthony Davis chase the ring. But it's the bubble and the playoffs haven't even started. But it is what it is. They'll be at the C tier. But next up we have the Orlando Magic. I have Orlando Magic at C tier as well. They are currently 2-4. Although they are shooting more threes than the average team, they're 8th in 3-pointers attempted. At 3-pointers made, they're 16th. Also, they lost Evan Fournier and Aaron Gordon, which is a huge loss for them as well.
And Isaac.
And Isaac as well, my fantasy guy. Defensive Player of the Year candidate in the future as well. Evan Fournier averaging almost 14.5 points, but he's shooting an abysmal 28% from 3. Then we have Aaron Gordon averaging almost 15.5 points, shooting 51% from the 3 to go along with 8.5 boards. So I can see how they've missed that as well. But Vucevic has been their main guy this bubble, averaging a little bit over 21 points per game with 51% from the field, and also a little bit over 10 rebounds as well. So Vucevic is their only bright spot, I'd say, during this bubble, this bubble run, I guess you can say. So I'd put them at C tier.
I wanted to put them at B tier just because, like, they still have got some wins and almost beat the Celtics, even without, like, their main players, including Fournier. But yeah, I guess you can say they've been kind of disappointing. You kind of thought they would do better than Brooklyn, even though Brooklyn's just been amazing. Yeah, I think I'll agree with you putting Magic in the C tier. I guess I just expected more for them, but it's also kind of disappointing because they've had those nagging injuries and whatever they had, including Isaac, who's just been a great player. It's just unfortunate. So yeah.
Yeah, and then last but not least, we have the Washington Wizards. They can go straight.
Thank you for the show.
Yep, bye.
D.
Yeah, they can go straight to the D tier. Yeah, they are 0-5. They're eliminated. I don't understand why Bradley Beal signed the huge extension, but he did. Washington will 100% be better next season compared to this season. That's it.
Take care. Peace.
Bye.